The following episode of Dad vs. Daughter was made possible by a contribution from Passport Game Studios.
Kingsport Festival from Passport Game Studios is a dice worker placement style of game with a Cthulhu theme. Players are going to be rolling their dice. We're going to be invoking the Elder Gods in order to receive gifts from them, aka resources, so that we can spread our influence over the town of Kingsport, because we're going to flip the Cthulhu mythos on its ears. Normally, we play as the investigators fighting the cultists, but this game we're going to actually be the cultists fighting the investigators. So let me show you how the game is played, and also we're going to have a special review at the end where we compare Kingsport Festival with Kingsburg. So sit back and we'll see what everybody thinks, as Kingsport Festival is our game of the week. You can see this game is kind of a table hog. I've got it partially set up for a 3-player game. There is some additional setup, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I'll just show you basically what we have right now. Around the outside of the board, we have our Elder Gods, starting with X and going from 1 all the way around to 19. Now, what these cards will do, when you visit the Elder Gods, they will give you certain gifts depending on what you pay them. So, for instance, the X, every player can always go to this Elder God here. You'll notice that the top part that has the little spiky things around it, this means that you have to give up 1 resource, and then at the bottom it's going to show you what you're going to get for that as your gifts. So if you give up 1 resource, you're actually going to gain 3 sanity. If you go here and you don't give up any gifts, you're only going to get 1 sanity. So you can see that each of these is broken up with this little divider there. Now, other gods are a little harder, and they offer more rewards, but they're also going to ask more of you in return. In this case, the number 19, you'll see that you have to give up 4 sanity, and then you're going to get 5 of any resource that you want. Others you don't have to give up anything. So like number 1 here, oops. Number 1, you don't give up anything here, and you're going to gain 1 evil. So and you're going to say, well, that just sounds bad. Well, like I said in the intro, we are the cultists. We're playing against the investigators, which is basically a flip from what most of the Cthulhu-based games have you do. So, yeah, we get to be the bad guys. The board has various buildings on them, and each building has their own tile. So in the case of the library, if we have influence there, you can see that we can hold up to 5 spells, because normally you can only hold 3. If you ever have more than 3 spells in your hand, you have to get rid of them. So if you have spells, you want to try to use them. Others, like this one here, says you gain, you gain 1 magic. So, and it tells you also when do you get this. So this is when you are establishing turn order, you're going to be able to gain 1 magic. And on the back of these tokens, it actually has the same artwork as what the building has on the game board. So you'll know which one of those belongs to which. The only thing is, by covering these up, you actually cover up the really cool artwork on the board. So that's kind of a negative, but that's okay. We have our markers, our larger cylinders on the basically our victory points that go around the outside of the board. The white cylinder goes on the time track, which goes from 1 to 12, and you can think of that as months in a year if you want. This is our sanity track, and we all start with 10 sanity. We can never exceed 12, and if we ever get to 0 and we have to pay sanity, say for going to one of the Elder Gods, and if we can't pay that, then what we do is we start actually losing points. So you want to kind of keep an eye on that. The number 6 spot actually is in blue. The number is blue, and that's to kind of show you the middle of this. Plus, you have certain cards that will come up that will say if you are below 6 sanity, you get this, or if you're above 6 sanity, you get another gift. Over here we have our magic track. Now, magic is used when we want to cast spells. You can goes all the way from 0, where we start, up to 12, and we can never have more than 12. The other thing we do is we have our spell decks. I mentioned them earlier. So you can see we have quite a few cards in that. It actually will tell you on the front what this is. This is the death spell, and it gives you basically what these spells do. So in the case of the death spell, it says it raises strength against investigators. So I'll talk about why you need the extra strength against investigators here in a second. So let me show you the evil spell cards. Now, the evil enhances your invocation. So that is when you are going to be invoking the elder gods out here. So this is going to help you with that. Because this is a dice game. So this is going to help you mitigate or basically do different things with your dice in order to possibly gain the favor of a higher elder god than what you normally would be able to. Because it goes all the way to 19, and as you will know, we have 3 dice, and these are normal 6-sided dice. So even if you rolled 3 6s, you still would be shy of invoking god number 19. So you would need to have some extra help in that. That's where that evil spell comes in. And then finally, we have the destruction spells. Now, these grant cult points or domain resources. So cult points are your victory points. Domain resources basically are these little cubes that you are going to accumulate over the course of the game. These are your resources, and these are going to be what you are going to be paying in order to expand your influence in the city of Kingsport. Because what you want to do as cultists is you're going to be going around to these various buildings, and you are going to put one of your influence tokens on those. You will then be able to get the benefit of that building throughout the rest of the game. And like I showed you before, it will show you when you will actually gain those benefits. So as I go around, everyone starts in the house, and the house will grant you one resource of your choice. If I go over to number 11 over here, you'll see that this is going to give you things during the raid. It says you gain +2 strength against investigators whose strength is 3 or less. So each investigator is going to have a strength, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But in order to go here, I need to pay 2 purple cubes, which are the evil, but I'm also going to get 2 cult points, victory points, at the end. And you'll notice those are the elder sign symbol. Also, on the outside of this location, you'll see that it's got a pistol there. That's to show you that at a quick glance, you go there in order to get more strength to fight against the investigators. Now, the buildings are leveled from 1 to 4, and you'll see that there are arrows that connect the buildings and show you where you can go from that building. So everybody starts in the house, and you'll notice that you have all these arrows that go from the house. So that's why I could go to the club. I could have went up here to number 11, which is the dock, instead, and I would have had to pay 2 death cubes, and I would get 1 cult point or victory point. Plus the dock ability during the raid, it gives me 1 strength. Now, the increasing levels between 2, 3, and 4 are, you're going to have to pay more resources and more difficult resources to obtain. And you're going to notice that you have to be able to go in order. So I can't go from the house directly over here to a level 3, the sanitarium. I have to actually either go through the dock or go through the club and then over. So it's nice that you have these arrows that show you how you can do things. Now, I'm not sure how well this is going to show up on camera, but the level 1 to level 2, actually I think the house is the only level 1. Going from 1 to 2, you'll notice that these connectors are all in purple. Going from a level 2 to a level 3, they're in black. And then going from a level 3 to a level 4 is red. So as you're moving around the board, you have to pay attention so you know which buildings that you can go to. Now, setup is determined by a number of different things. We have these scenario cards here, and we shuffle these up, and you can see that we have quite a few. You're only going to use one of these per game, so you're going to notice that there's plenty of replayability here. So let's just say that we got this first scenario. So this scenario is called The Hound, and it says it's September 1922, and then it gives you the information about that. So the first thing it says is choose a festival card at random, put it under this card without looking at it, and at the end of the game, reveal it and apply its effects. So we have a bunch of festival cards here. So, and it will tell you what these are. So we have 6 of these. So we'll just choose one at random, and that is going to go face down here. And we won't look at that until the end of the game. Now the effect of this scenario says, during each raid, each cultist may spend 1 evil. The investigator gains 1 strength against each cultist that does not spend this resource. So you want to make sure that you're going to have that to pay, because you do not want to increase the level of the investigators if at all possible. And then it says at the bottom, it says the cost to expand into any level 3 or level 4 building is decreased by 1 evil. So in the newsroom, you'll notice we have 2 evil, 1 death, and 2 destruction that we need to pay in order to expand our influence there. But according to the scenario, we only have to spend, or we decrease that cost by 1 evil. So I only have to pay 1 evil, 1 death, and 2 destruction in order to go there. And then finally at the bottom of the card, you'll notice where it says raids 4, 7, 9, and 10. On our time track, you'll notice we have all these numbers that I had mentioned. So 4, 7, 9, and 10, we are going to put tokens on those spots to show when those raids happen. So we'll put the number 1 on 4, we'll put the number 2 on 7, we'll put the number 3 on 9, and the number 4 on 10. So that tells us that whenever we end our turn on that, we have to actually fight the investigators. So you'll notice we have our deck of investigators here, and they have numbers on them. The number means that this goes with that number raid. So this goes with the 4th raid. You'll also notice that it says investigator down here, and it says 4th raid, as well as it gives you kind of a hint at what the power of this investigator is. Here it says it's anywhere from 4 to 6. And while we're talking about the investigators, I'll just kind of show you the card here. So you can see that he is actually Gustav Johansson. He is a level 5 investigator. He has a skill which says he gets +1 strength against cultists with 6 or less sanity. Now, if you remember when I was talking about that sanity track earlier, I had mentioned how 6 is kind of set apart. That's to kind of help you get a visual clue when you're sitting there to know where you are at. So it's kind of a often used condition in the game. Now, if you win against him, meaning that you have greater than 5, you will get, the cultists gain 3 cult points. So you're going to get 3 victory points, basically. If you lose, meaning that you had 4 or less strength against him, the cultist removes his marker from one of the highest level buildings, his choice. Now, the other thing about fighting the investigators, let's say that I had a strength of 5. I would actually not have to suffer the loss, but I also do not get the benefits of the win. Basically, nothing happens, everything is good. Now, let's just say, for instance, that I had actually 10 strength against him. So since I have double, or if I had more, then I would receive double the benefits. So in the case of old Gustav here, if I had 10 strength against his 5, then I would have actually gained 6 victory points, or 6 cultist points. Now, in addition to the raid cards, we also have event cards. So you'll see that it says it influences the raid. So when we get to that spot where we are resolving a raid, we actually flip the event card first. And you'll see that there's a very small text on there. And it says, Beyond the Wall of Sleep, 1919. And then it says, reveal the investigator card for this raid, then reveal a random investigator from the same group, chosen from those returned to the box during setup. Place the Investigator with the higher strength in this raid and discard the other. Because while we have multiples of the raid levels, we're going to only use one. So in the case here, let's just look at these. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got 6 of a level. We're only going to pick one of these, and then the rest of these are returned to the box. So in the case of that event, that's saying that we would pick another one of these, and whatever had the higher strength, that's the one we would use. We would discard that. So like I said, you'll see that we have all these different levels. So we'll shuffle those up, and we'll put them in stacks 1, 2, 3, and 4, and give them also a corresponding raid event. That's really the setup, and it seems a little bit more intimidating than it actually is. It's not really that bad. So let's talk about the gameplay. What we're going to do is each player is going to take their 3 dice, and they will all roll them. Okay, so that's my roll. There is the yellow roll, and there is the red roll. As kind of a catch-up mechanism, whoever rolls the lowest actually goes first in turn order. So in this case, yellow rolled a 10, so they would be on the first spot on the turn order track. Red rolled 12, so they would go second, and green rolled 13, so they would go third. Now, first and second is going to get a little bit of a benefit. First place is going to gain 2 sanity. Second place will also gain 1 sanity, and 3, 4, and 5 are just out of luck. They're not going to get anything. If there is a tie between the dice rolls, then they compare their individual dice, starting with the highest die rolled, giving priority to the cultist with the lower results. So if the tie persists, then they compare cult points, rewarding the one with less points. So there's always kind of that catch-up mechanism. So if you're in last place, don't worry, you're not really out of it. So now that we've established our role, we start looking and placing our dice. So when you place your dice, you can take 1, 2, or 3 and place all of them on one. You could place 2 on one, or you could place 1 on one. But after you've done a single dice placement on one of the gods and then invoked them, then your turn for this part is over until it comes back around and everyone has passed. So let's kind of show you what this is like. So let's just say that the yellow player looking, they see everybody else has a 4. They say, well, you know what, I want to invoke the number 4 god. And I will point out that on the back of these, it says what these gods are. Like number 3 here he's Migo. He's fungi from Yugoth. I know I'm probably butchering that, so I apologize. But you can just flip over the back and see what you want, or see which one of the elder gods these are. So now it goes to Red's turn. Red says, well, I can't take a 4, but I'm going to take a 7. So I'm going to use my 2 dice, my 4 and my 3, and that will be the 7. Now it goes to the green player. The green player says, well, I kind of want that 13 because that's going to give me quite a few resources. So I'm going to go over there. I'm going to put all 3 of my dice on 13. Now it comes back in turn order again. It's yellow since they still have 2 dice. And let's just say that we can't go to 4 again because that god has already been invoked. So we will say, okay, I'm going to place mine on number 6. Red has only a 5. They place it there. Now, if, for instance, let's back that up and show you another possibility. Yellow could say, I really want number 2. Red then says, okay, I want number 5. Now, because yellow still has a 4, they can't go to the 4 spot. But what they can do is they can always go to the X. And like I said earlier, they're going to be able to get these benefits. Now, let's just say Red did not want to go to 5. Red could have actually gone to X first, and then yellow could have come in as well, since that is the only elder god that will accept more dice placement. All the rest of them are only single use. So once all the dice have been placed, or if everybody has passed, then we start resolving the elder god's gifts in order. So in this case, we would go and start at X, red would say, you know what, I'm not going to give up a resource, I'm just going to gain a sanity. So red would then move up on the sanity track, and then they take their die back. Yellow says, well, I've got an extra death cube, I don't need that, so I'm going to give that up and I'm going to gain 3 sanity. However, the most they can have is 12, so they're really only going to get 2 extra sanity. So yellow takes their die back. Then nobody is on 1. Yellow now is on 2. There's no payment that they have to make, but they're going to get that evil cube back as their reward. So they will take that and put that back into their area. Next it goes up here to 4. So they're going to pay a sanity, and they are going to get a destruction, and they will also get a magic. So they would move 1 up on the magic track. Coming around to number 7 here, red would remove their dice. They would pay 1 sanity, and they're going to get 2 evil and 2 magic. So he'll get 2 evil cubes, and he will move up on the magic track. Finally, it comes back over here to green, and green will take all of their dice, and they will pay 2 sanity, and they're going to get 1 evil cube, 1 death cube, 1 destruction cube, and they also get a spell. So they can choose whichever spell that they want. So let's just say that they're not too worried about the raid because it's not going to happen until turn 4. They want to get something that's going to help them with their Elder God invocation. So he's going to take this evil spell here. Now, what the evil spell has is a lot of small text. So what this is going to say is this is when you play this spell. So this is during the invocation. It says, when invoking an Elder God, add 2 to the result of your dice. Reduce the sanity loss to invoke the Elder God by 1. So we're going to play this card probably when we have to lose sanity, and we're going to be able to add 2 to our result of our dice in order to go up. So that's a case where I pointed out before how you could get to 19. So let's just say that the green player had rolled 17. So they're going to be able to use this card to get to 19. They would only pay 3 sanity because this reduces the cost, and then they would get their 5 gifts. And then this card, all spells are a one-time use, so this card then would be discarded. So after we have retrieved our dice and we have gained the gifts of the Elder Gods, then we are done with the round. We will advance the round marker to the next month, basically, and we all roll our dice again and figure out what our new turn order is. And if we happen to actually score more than 50 points, we each have our own little token here. And on the back of this, well, so there it shows my green cylinder, but on the back, each one has a different icon based on the color. So since the cultist points are shown with the green elder sign, that's why this was assigned to green. So what I would do is I would just place that on this plus marker, and that would show that, say in this case, I would have 54 points. And I will honestly say that I've never gotten close to having to actually use that. So that is Kingsport Festival as far as how to play it. So let's get to what Dad's gaming group thinks of it. Now this is going to be a 2-part review. We're actually going to do an extra review after this because this game is so closely tied to the game Kingsburg that you can't help but make comparisons. And because of that, I think it's a little bit unfair in order to talk about Kingsburg in our initial review. So after we get done talking about just Kingsport Festival, then we're going to do a second review and talk about the similarities or what we think between this and Kingsburg. So I will start off and say that my group thought this was a good game. They enjoyed it for the most part. We had one player who wasn't so wild about it. And his biggest complaint was that there is not enough dice manipulation because once you roll, then you're pretty much locked in unless you have spells that are going to allow you to change the value of your dice or allow you to add to that value. And that's a case, or that causes a case of somebody really blocking other players out because based on turn order, they can see that, hey, this player's got a 4, I've got a 4, another player's got a 4. I'm going to go to the 4 just to eliminate that as an option for them. So that's was really probably the biggest complaint that they had against the game. Another player said that they didn't really like the layout of how this board was. They thought it was not very well visually. When you kind of sit back from it, you can see that these are like little streets and things that go around there, and obviously the buildings are within Kingsport. But they didn't really like that aspect. They thought the board could have either been a little bit better off instead of being like this. They thought this was almost too busy. And that really was about the end of the negative. The components are very well done. The nice wooden cylinders that they have, the cardboard tokens are really good. The numbers and everything is clear. One of my biggest complaints is the small text. Because you have, for me, I've got bad eyes and I use reading glasses to begin with, but this text is so small that I even have a hard time with my reading glasses, and I have to pull out my handy dandy little magnifying glass a lot of times just to see what that is. I understand why. I mean, the size of the card, you're trying to get more text on there, but I would have rather had larger cards and larger text. The game is also a table hog, like I had pointed out before. I think what I would have rather had seen was that instead of this board being like this, that maybe we had individual player boards that we could kind of track where we had our influence at, because everybody can go to the same locations. Everybody has to start going to the house, but everybody can go to all these other locations. There's nothing that blocks anybody from going to where another player already had their influence. So I think that might have alleviated everything. And then what I would have done is put these elder gods as being on the main board, being a little bit smaller. These, where it's nice that you have this flavor text on the back, really we weren't looking at it that much. It is kind of neat, especially for those of people that, like me, who are not that well versed in the Cthulhu mythos. There's a lot of information here, so this is kind of neat. These are pretty thin. That's not really that big of a deal. I didn't notice them sliding around on the table that much, but I would have just probably switched that and made this, like I said, smaller player boards, and then put the Elder Gods as the larger player board. I think there's a lot of replayability in the game. Like I said, you're only going to use one scenario card, but you've got all of these. So that is a big plus in my book. The festival cards, which there's only 6 of them, and I actually did forget in my gameplay review to say that at the end of the game, whenever we get to the level 12, we're actually going to flip this over, and then we are going to see what the effect is at the end of the game. So you can see this says Far From Home, the Festival, 1923. Each cultist in order gains 1 cult point for each of their markers that is not in play. So any of these markers that we still had left over that are not in play, we're going to get points. So again, it's almost as if the game is focused on making sure that there are plenty of opportunities for players who may have kind of fallen behind. So I do like that aspect as well. The artwork on the Elder Gods, I think, it's a little dark, so the definition on some of these is not as good as far as trying to make out exactly what it is, and some of these just you really can't tell what it is at all unless you flip it around. But it is somewhat disturbing. I look at like number 16 here. That just looks really weird. But and the text, that's my only other gripe, is the text on the cards is just so small. So that'll do it for just the review part on Kingsport Festival. So now let's talk about how this compares to Kingsburg. So here is what my game group thought. If they had to choose between the two, either Kingsport Festival or Kingsburg, because the games really are almost identical with a couple of minor things, they all gravitate and say they would rather play Kingsburg. Now, given the time of year it is right now, this is October, they said that they wouldn't mind playing Kingsport Festival because basically the theme. And when you have more of a spooky themed game compared to just the normal game, this time of year when you're looking to play that, they would actually play Kingsport Festival. The similarities are all over the place. In Kingsburg, you've got 3 dice. You're going to roll them and you're going to place them on one of the people in the King's Court to try to get their favor. What I was talking about as my negative, or what I would have changed, the Kingsburg has individual player sheets. So when you're building the buildings, you have that on your little player sheet. And you have all of the King's Court as your main board. So that's a change. It does have the little bit of the catch-up mechanism that Kingsport Festival has. It's not quite as pronounced, but you will get some special things. There is a way to get more, to get a white die when you roll, so you'd actually have another die. Kingsburg comes with little +2 tokens or plus or minus tokens. So that is a way that you can manipulate your dice a little bit better. And that was one of the big things that the group had always said was they liked the dice manipulation better in Kingsburg over Kingsport Festival. But the Investigator raids match up with kind of the invasion that you have to deal in Kingsburg, where you have the orcs or whatever. Same type of thing. At the end of the year in Kingsburg, you always have to take care of winter, but you know what the strength is here, or you know where the strength range is, and that's just like here. We know by looking at the Investigator cards, the range is like from 4 to 6 or whatever. Same with Kingsburg. It will tell you, hey, these guys are a range of 4 to 6 or whatever. The thing I like about Kingsburg is you have a military track. It's on the top of the board. In Kingsport Festival, you have to actually look at the board and count up every time. And that's because these are conditional. So like on the club, it says you gain +2 strength against investigators with strength 3 or less. So that's going to change the more you go up in the raids. So like raids 3 and 4, they may be greater than that. So that's going to change each time. So you have to constantly recalculate that. In Kingsburg, you don't. You have the military track. When you gain military strength, you just go up in the track. So you always can tell at a glance where your strength is. And I know that there have been player boards that other players have created out on Board Game Geek that you can download for this. And I have not used those, but those might actually help that regard. The other thing with Kingsburg is it's a lighter game as far as the tone. Kingsport Festival is very dark in tone. You've got these elder gods. The art is, kind of creepy. Families may prefer Kingsburg over this, and vice versa. The people that really are into the Lovecraft theme and want the horror element are going to like probably Kingsport Festival. To me, it's really those very minor differences are really negligible. I think the games on their own stand very well. I like the mechanic of rolling the dice and either invoking the gods or getting the benefits from those people that are in court in Kingsburg. So gameplay, I think, is really almost identical. Which one would I rather play? I think Kingsburg is more streamlined. And throughout the course of the year, if I had to pick between the two, I would pick Kingsburg. Now, this time of year when I'm wanting to play those scarier games, or if I'm doing a whole Cthulhu or Lovecraft theme, I'm going to choose Kingsport Festival. So in my opinion, there's room for both of these in my collection. They're just going to be situational on which one I pull out. But other than that, I think both games are really good, and I will be keeping both. So that is our joint review of Kingsport Festival versus Kingsburg, and we will catch you guys next time.
If you would like to support us, you can visit patreon.com/dadvdaughter.
Like and follow us on Facebook to stay current on our show schedule, sneak peeks at future shows, and to interact with us.